In this video, we're going to go over the history of the arcade game Donkey Kong and how it helped build the foundation for today's current gaming industry.
These are the games that caught the public eye. These are the games people cared about.
It's Donkey Kong, the arcade sensation.
It was the most popular video game in the world.
Mario, save me!
Donkey Kong, without question, is the hardest game.
And although it may look pretty simple,
if you don't know how to play the game, it won't last a minute.
Go over the barrels, you duck to the barrels, hammer the barrels.
It's absolute brutality. It boils down to hardcore skill.
In 1981, Nintendo stood at a critical crossroads. The Japanese company had made an ambitious but devastating bet on an arcade game called Radar Scope, ordering 3,000 cabinets for the American market. When only about 1,000 units sold, Nintendo of America was left with a warehouse full of unwanted arcade machines and teetering on the brink of financial ruin. Company president Hiroshi Yamauchi turned to a young artist named Shigeru Miyamoto, who had never designed a video game before, giving him a modest budget of $267,000 to create something that could save the company. Miyamoto's original concept stemmed from his desire to license Popeye characters for the game, focusing on the love triangle between Bluto, Popeye, and Olive. When Nintendo couldn't secure the rights, he crafted an original story. Bluto evolved into a gorilla, Popeye became Mario, the new protagonist, while Olive Oyl became Pauline, the damsel in distress. The name Donkey Kong came from Miyamoto's attempt to convey a stubborn gorilla using an English-Japanese dictionary, combining donkey, meaning stupid, with Kong, Japanese slang for gorilla. The development process was intensive, with Miyamoto working alongside chief engineer Gunpei Yokoi to create what would become one of the most technologically advanced arcade games of its time. The hardware specifications were impressive for 1981. The game could display 128 foreground sprites at 16 by 16 pixels each and 256 background tiles at 8 by 8 pixels each. Mario and moving objects used single sprites, while Pauline required 2 sprites, and the massive Donkey Kong character needed 6 sprites to create his complete form. Nintendo subcontracted Ikegami Tsushinki for some of the development, though their role was limited to providing mechanical programming assistance to fix the software created by Nintendo. The 4-person programming team created approximately 20 kilobytes of content, working to implement Miyamoto's revolutionary design choices, including multiple unique stages, something practically unheard of in arcade games of the era. The game's sound design was handled by Yukio Kaneoka, who composed the memorable soundtrack that would become instantly recognizable to arcade goers. The physical cabinet design went through several iterations. The earliest versions were built using converted radar scope cabinets, which featured a distinctive red laminate finish. These TKG2 machines are highly sought after by collectors today, with only an estimated 1,500 to 2,500 units ever produced. The cabinets featured either 5 or 7 speaker slots on the front panel, a detail that would later become crucial for authenticating original machines. After the initial run of red cabinets, Nintendo switched to the now iconic baby blue color for the TKG3 and TKG4 models. By July 1981, Nintendo began testing the market by placing 2 Donkey Kong machines in Seattle bars. Skeptical bar owners were amazed when the games earned $30 per day, equivalent to 120 plays. This success prompted Nintendo of America to begin a massive conversion operation at their headquarters in Redmond, Washington. A skeleton crew of just 6 people, including President Minoru Arakawa and his wife Yoko, worked tirelessly to convert 2,000 surplus radar scope machines into Donkey Kong cabinets. The game's technical innovations were substantial. Each arcade machine ran on a Z80 processor clocked at 3 MHz, with interrupts inserted at every 1/60th of a second to ensure smooth animation. The programming team had to work within tight constraints. They had approximately 49,800 clock cycles per frame to handle all game logic, including 3,600 cycles for sprite DMA transfer and 12,000 cycles for collision detection. This left just 34,200 cycles for the main game program, requiring incredible optimization skills from the development team. The gameplay itself was revolutionary. Donkey Kong featured 4 distinct stages, each representing 25 meters of vertical climb, 25 meters, 50 meters, 75 meters, and 100 meters. The first stage involved Mario scaling a construction site while dodging barrels. The second stage introduced conveyor belts and cement pans, while the third featured elevators and bouncing springs. The final stage required players to remove 8 rivets to defeat Donkey Kong. This variety of gameplay was unprecedented in arcade games of the time. The success was immediate and overwhelming. By October 1981, Nintendo was selling 4,000 units per month. By June 1982, they had sold 60,000 units, generating a staggering $180 million in revenue. Each arcade cabinet sold for approximately $2,000 to $2,500. And the game continued to earn substantial income for operators, bringing in an additional $100 million annually for several years. This success led to immediate demand for home versions. In the end, Yamauchi granted Coleco exclusive console and tabletop rights to Donkey Kong, because he believed it was the hungriest company. In addition, Arakawa felt that as a more established company in the US, Coleco could better handle marketing. In return, Nintendo received an undisclosed sum plus $1.40 per game cartridge sold and $1 per tabletop unit. Coleco bundled the game with the ColecoVision console, which went on sale in August 1982. However, the individual cartridge was also available in stores. The game's influence extended far beyond its immediate success. It marked several firsts in gaming history. It was the first game that implemented jumping over hazards and gaps, and introduced cutscenes to advance a storyline. Perhaps most importantly, it created the character of Mario, who would become Nintendo's mascot and the star of his own highly successful franchise. Donkey Kong also sparked a significant legal battle when Universal Studios sued Nintendo in 1982, claiming the game violated their King Kong trademark. Nintendo's lawyer Howard Lincoln discovered that Universal had previously won a lawsuit declaring King Kong was in the public domain. This victory not only saved Nintendo millions in potential damages, but also established them as a company willing to stand up to larger corporations. The development process wasn't without its challenges. The programming team initially complained that creating multiple stages was essentially like making 4 separate games. The collision detection programming was particularly challenging, requiring developer Yasuhiro Murata to optimize the code to just 25 bytes and 110 clocks to handle the numerous sprites on screen, while maintaining the game's required 60 frames per second refresh rate. The game's release marked a turning point for Nintendo and the arcade industry as a whole. Its success provided Nintendo with the financial foundation to enter the home console market with the Famicom, later known as the Nintendo Entertainment System, in the West. In fact, Masayuki Uemura, the Famicom's lead architect, designed the console specifically to faithfully recreate Donkey Kong, making the game instrumental in shaping the future of home gaming. By the end of 1982, Donkey Kong had become one of the highest-grossing arcade games of all time, second only to Pac-Man. The game that began as a desperate attempt to salvage unwanted arcade cabinets had become the cornerstone of Nintendo's gaming empire. The success of the arcade version prompted numerous home console adaptations. Coleco's licensing deal led to versions for the ColecoVision, Atari 2600, and Intellivision. Each version had its own technical limitations and quirks. The Atari 2600, programmed by Gary Kitchen in just 3 or 4 months, could only include 2 of the original 4 levels due to memory constraints. Nintendo was extremely protective of its new property. When Coleco unveiled the Atom computer running a port of Donkey Kong at the 1983 Consumer Electronics Show, Atari protested that it violated their licensing agreement for home computer versions. Nintendo's president Yamauchi demanded that Coleco's president Arnold Greenberg withdraw the Atom port, which he did to maintain their relationship. A fascinating Easter egg remained hidden in the Atari 8-bit computer version for 26 years. Programmer Landon Dyer had embedded his initials LMD in the game, which would appear on the title screen if a player fulfilled a very specific list of criteria before killing Mario. This secret went undiscovered until Dyer mentioned it on his blog, though he couldn't remember how to trigger it. The success of Donkey Kong in arcades created a merchandising phenomenon. The game spawned numerous licensed products, including breakfast cereal, toys, and even a Milton Bradley board game. A song titled Do the Donkey Kong was released as part of the Pac-Man Fever album, cementing the game's place in pop culture.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, do the Donkey Kong, do the Donkey Kong, come on.
By 1983, Donkey Kong had generated over $280 million in revenue from arcade operations alone. Its influence extended beyond pure profits. The game established Nintendo as a major force in the video game industry and created the character of Mario, who would go on to become one of the most recognizable figures in gaming history. In the decades following its arcade success, Donkey Kong has evolved through various adaptations, ports, and modifications. The original Donkey Kong was followed by Donkey Kong Jr. in 1982, flipping the script by casting Mario as the villain. Players now controlled Donkey Kong's son, using an innovative two-handed climbing mechanic to scale vines and rescue his father, introducing a risk-reward system where faster climbing left players more vulnerable. The cabinet design featured a light blue color scheme with Junior prominently displayed. In 1994, Nintendo released what many consider a hidden gem, the Game Boy version of Donkey Kong. While it started as a remake of the arcade original, it expanded into a massive 100-plus level puzzle platformer that introduced many new mechanics. This version added the ability to perform backflips, handstands, and wire hangs, while also letting Mario pick up and throw items. It served as inspiration for the later Mario vs. Donkey Kong series. Donkey Kong 3 represented a dramatic departure, using the same hardware but completely changing the gameplay style. Players controlled Stanley with a more sophisticated control scheme that allowed for both vertical and horizontal shooting. The game introduced a scoring system based on both defeating enemies and protecting flowers. Only about 5,000 units were manufactured, making original cabinets extremely rare today. By the early 1990s, arcade gaming was waning, and Donkey Kong had been largely dormant for almost a decade. Nintendo had found massive success with Mario, but their iconic ape remained in the background. That was about to change dramatically, thanks to a British developer called Rareware. In 1992, Rare made a bold move that would revolutionize console gaming. They invested $1 million in Silicon Graphics workstations, the same technology used in Hollywood films like Jurassic Park. When Nintendo executives saw what Rare could do with this technology, they offered them access to any Nintendo character they wanted. Rare chose Donkey Kong. The character received a complete makeover. Gone was the simple arcade villain, replaced by a powerful hero with attitude, red tie, and a new sidekick named Diddy Kong. Kevin Bayliss, Rare's character designer, created this iconic look that would define Donkey Kong for generations to come. Donkey Kong Country's development was revolutionary. The team used advanced 3D modeling to create pre-rendered sprites that looked three-dimensional on the Super Nintendo's 16-bit hardware. Each character animation required painstaking attention to detail. Donkey Kong alone had over 1,000 animation frames. When Donkey Kong Country launched in November 1994, it stunned the gaming world. The graphics were unlike anything console gamers had seen before. Lush jungle environments, fluid character animations, and realistic water effects pushed the Super Nintendo to its absolute limits. The game sold 9 million copies, becoming the third best-selling SNES game of all time. Rare wasted no time building on this success. Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest, arrived in 1995, introducing Dixie Kong and taking players to darker, more pirate-themed environments. The soundtrack, composed by David Wise, was particularly praised, with tracks like Stickerbush Symphony becoming iconic pieces of gaming music. The series continued with Dixie Kong's Double Trouble in 1996, while Game Boy players got their own trilogy with the Donkey Kong Land series. These games managed to compress the country gameplay into Nintendo's portable hardware, though with necessary compromises to the visuals. But Rare had bigger ambitions. In 1999, they brought Donkey Kong into true 3D with Donkey Kong 64. The game required the N64's expansion pack to handle its massive worlds and 5 playable characters. While some criticized its focus on collecting items, there were over 200 collectibles to find. The game showcased just how far Donkey Kong had come from his arcade origins. Retro Studios revived the Donkey Kong Country style with Donkey Kong Country Returns in 2010 for the Wii, followed by Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze in 2014 for the Wii U, later ported to Switch. These games maintained the side-scrolling format while adding modern graphics and new gameplay mechanics like team-up moves and dynamic camera angles. DK also appeared in numerous spin-offs, including Diddy Kong Racing for N64, DK King of Swing, 2005, and DK Jungle Climber, 2007 for Nintendo's handhelds, and Donkey Kong Barrel Blast, 2007 for Wii. Additionally, Donkey Kong has been a regular character in the Mario sports games, Mario Party series, and Super Smash Bros. Games. The arcade game's popularity led to high-stakes competition among players. The first widely recognized world record was set by Billy Mitchell on November 7, 1982, with a score of 874,300 points. This remarkable achievement would stand unchallenged for nearly 18 years. The game's difficulty was legendary. Professional players noted that the average gameplay session lasted less than a minute before losing all lives. Level 22 became known as the kill screen due to a programming error that made it impossible to progress further. The game would give players less time than necessary to complete the stage, effectively ending any attempt to progress beyond this point. This limitation created a natural ceiling for high scores, making the competition about perfecting gameplay up to this point rather than endless progression. The rise of emulation for Donkey Kong began in the 1990s. MAME, Multiple Arcade Machine Emulator, made the game accessible to a new generation of players, though this accessibility would later become a point of controversy in competitive gaming. The emulator's ability to save states and record inputs created debates about the authenticity of high scores achieved through these means. Competitive Donkey Kong gaming reached new heights in 2007 with the release of the documentary The King of Kong: A Fistful of Quarters. The film chronicled Steve Weeba's attempts to break Billy Mitchell's long-standing record, bringing unprecedented attention to the competitive scene. This sparked a new era of record-breaking attempts and rivalry. Following the documentary's release, competition intensified. Hank Chien, known as Dr. Kong, emerged as a dominant force in 2010, setting a record of 1,061,700 points. A series of intense battles for the top score followed, with players including Robbie Lakeman, Wes Copeland, and Jeff Wolf pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible in the game. The high-score competition reached a crucial turning point in 2018 when Twin Galaxies, the official record-keeping organization, investigated Billy Mitchell's submitted scores. After a frame-by-frame analysis, suggested his games were played on an emulator rather than original hardware. His records were vacated, and he was banned from future participation. This decision was partially reversed in 2024 when Twin Galaxies agreed to reinstate Mitchell's scores in a historical database, though he remains banned from current competition. Modern competitive events centered around Donkey Kong include the Kong Off Tournament series, which began in 2010.
Lincoln Man will head to Denver tomorrow to compete in Kong Off 2, a tournament of Donkey Kong champions.
10 11 News reporter Cassie Anderson tells us how his hobby turned into a serious competition.
These events bring together the world's top players to compete on original arcade hardware. The inaugural event was won by Hank Chien. Subsequent tournaments saw victories by players like Jeff Wilms, who won Kong Off 3 in Denver among 22 competitors. Modern high-score competition continued on original hardware, with Robbie Lakeman holding the current record of 1,272,800 points, set in 2021. The theoretical maximum score remains a subject of debate, with players noting that achieving the highest possible score requires both perfect execution and favorable random number generation, comparable to drawing 4 of a kind in a 3-hour poker hand. The game's influence extends into current popular culture. The original arcade game has been referenced and recreated in various media, including its appearance in the 2015 film Pixels and a prominent role in the new Donk City level of Super Mario Odyssey. In 2023, the Strong National Museum of Play unveiled the world's largest playable Donkey Kong arcade cabinet, standing nearly 20 feet tall. This installation uses an original Donkey Kong motherboard and serves as a testament to the game's enduring cultural impact. The museum's expansion includes this monumental creation as part of its World Video Game Hall of Fame exhibit. In 2024, Nintendo announced plans for a high-definition remaster of Donkey Kong Country Returns for the Nintendo Switch, scheduled for release in 2025. This continues the tradition of updating and preserving the franchise for new generations. Additionally, Universal Studios Japan is developing a Donkey Kong-themed expansion to Super Nintendo World, featuring attractions based on the character's various gaming appearances. As Donkey Kong approaches its 45th anniversary, its impact on gaming culture remains substantial. The game continues to inspire new generations of players and developers, while its competitive scene maintains the spirit of arcade gaming's golden age. From homebrew modifications to museum installations, Donkey Kong's influence extends far beyond its humble origins as a solution to unsold arcade cabinets. Thanks for joining me on this trip through the history of this legendary game. If there is any interesting gaming phenomena you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss more videos like this one. See you next time.